Welcome to Truth Report, the show that pulls back the curtain on the stories shaping our world, exposing the hidden agendas and holding power accountable. Tonight, we're dissecting a landscape where truth is often a casualty and human lives are bargaining chips.
From corporate giants misleading Congress about critical safety features, to global powers reshaping trade at the expense of local livelihoods, and the chilling weaponization of immigration against the most vulnerable. We're going deep into the mechanisms of control and deception.
We uncover a disturbing pattern: powerful entities, whether corporate or governmental, consistently prioritizing their strategic interests over transparency, public safety, and fundamental human rights. This isn't just news, it's a systemic breakdown.
We'll expose how an executive's sworn testimony to Congress about vehicle safety was a direct contradiction of documented facts, putting millions of drivers at risk. The implications for regulatory oversight and corporate integrity are profound.
And we'll reveal how the very systems meant to protect human dignity are being twisted for political gain, from the deportation of a 5-year-old asylum seeker to the covert transfer of Palestinians to Israel. Tonight, the truth will be heard. Our first story tonight takes us into the heart of corporate accountability, or lack thereof. Tesla, a company often lauded for its innovation, is facing serious questions about the veracity of its statements to Congress regarding vehicle safety.
According to Electrek, Tesla Vice President of Vehicle Engineering Lars Moravy recently told a Senate committee that no one has ever remotely taken control of Tesla vehicles. A bold claim, but one that crumbles under scrutiny.
This statement, made under oath to lawmakers, directly contradicts documented history. Electrek reports that this claim doesn't hold up to the facts of history, calling it out as a clear falsehood that potentially misleads Congress and the public.
The critical detail here is that a single hacker has, in fact, gained control of Tesla's entire fleet in the past. This isn't a hypothetical scenario, it's a proven vulnerability that strikes at the core of the company's security claims and autonomous driving assurances.
The implications are staggering. If a company executive can make such a demonstrably false statement to Congress about a fundamental safety and security issue, what does that say about their commitment to transparency and public trust?
It raises serious concerns about regulatory oversight. If lawmakers are basing future policy on inaccurate information provided by the very companies they regulate, then the entire system is compromised, leaving consumers vulnerable to unchecked corporate power.
Tesla benefits from downplaying security risks. It helps maintain investor confidence, deflects calls for stricter regulation, and keeps the narrative of invincibility alive. The cost of admitting such a vulnerability could be immense for their stock and market position.
But who loses? Millions of Tesla owners who might operate under a false sense of security, assuming their vehicles are impenetrable. And the public, whose safety on the roads depends on truthful disclosures from manufacturers about potential dangers.
This incident connects to a broader pattern of powerful tech companies often operating with a sense of impunity, leveraging their influence and market dominance to evade genuine accountability, even when it involves direct misrepresentation to federal oversight bodies.
It underscores a dangerous trend where corporate interests are prioritized over the public's right to truthful information, especially concerning critical safety and security protocols in rapidly advancing, complex technologies like autonomous vehicles.
Next, we turn our gaze to the shifting sands of global power, where international trade agreements are not merely economic deals, but strategic maneuvers designed to reshape alliances and influence geopolitical order.
The South China Morning Post reports on India's recent landmark free trade pact with the European Union, a deal that Brussels' top bureaucrat, Ursula von der Leyen, hailed as a step towards a more stable, more prosperous, and more secure world.
Von der Leyen's words, "When India succeeds, the world is more stable," are more than diplomatic pleasantries. They reflect a growing consensus in European capitals that India has become a crucial player in balancing global power, particularly in relation to China.
This trade blitz, as SCMP calls it, is India's calculated effort to diversify its economic partnerships and solidify its position on the global stage, leveraging its massive market and burgeoning influence to secure strategic alliances.
For India, the benefits are clear: increased economic growth, greater access to European markets, and enhanced geopolitical leverage. This positions them as a key counterweight in the evolving global power struggle, particularly in Asia.
The EU also gains, securing a powerful ally and a vast market, diversifying its supply chains away from over-reliance on other nations, and strengthening its diplomatic hand in an increasingly volatile international landscape.
But who might lose in this grand game of economic chess? Other developing nations, perhaps, as global capital and trade routes are redirected, potentially leaving them on the periphery of these new powerful blocs.
There's also the unstated environmental cost of increased global trade and production, often overlooked in the rush for economic prosperity and geopolitical advantage, impacting local communities and ecosystems worldwide.
This story highlights how economic policy is now inextricably linked with national security and geopolitical strategy. Trade deals are no longer just about tariffs, they are instruments for building alliances, projecting power, and defining the future global order.
It's a clear demonstration of how major nations are actively working to keep a specific global order afloat, as the SCMP headline suggests, an order where their interests are protected, and new powers are carefully integrated to maintain a strategic balance.
From global trade, we pivot to domestic politics and international relations, where policy decisions often serve political optics more than tangible economic impact. We're looking at former President Trump's recent move on beef imports.
The Guardian reports that Donald Trump recently signed a proclamation to increase the U.S.'s low-tariff imports of Argentinian beef. This move, made on Friday, was presented as an effort to lower costs for U.S. consumers.
However, economists have largely dismissed this claim, stating that the change will likely have little impact on prices. This suggests the proclamation is more about political messaging than actual economic relief for the average American household.
The initial announcement of this move back in October, made by a White House official, immediately sparked fury from U.S. cattle ranchers. They rightly perceived it as a direct threat to their livelihoods and a betrayal of promises to protect American industries.
So, who truly benefits here? Argentina, certainly, gaining increased access to the lucrative U.S. market for its beef exports. And politically, Trump can claim to be addressing inflation, even if the actual economic effect is negligible.
The clear losers are U.S. cattle ranchers, who face increased competition from foreign imports, potentially driving down prices for their products and impacting their profitability. This directly contradicts the America First rhetoric often championed.
This decision seems to be a classic example of political opportunism. It allows Trump to appear decisive on inflation while simultaneously cultivating relationships with international partners, all while potentially alienating a segment of his domestic base.
It's a cynical exercise in political theater, where a policy change is enacted with great fanfare, knowing full well its practical impact will be minimal, but its symbolic value is high for specific political narratives or international relationships.
This situation connects to the broader theme of trade policy being weaponized or utilized for political ends, often disregarding expert economic analysis and the very domestic industries it purports to protect.
It exposes the cracks in populist promises, where the actions taken don't always align with the rhetoric, and the interests of specific domestic sectors can be sacrificed for broader political or international leverage.
Our next story delves into the harrowing realities of immigration policy, where human lives become entangled in political agendas, and the most vulnerable often pay the highest price. We're discussing the case of Liam Conejo Ramos.
Al Jazeera reports that the U.S. government is seeking the deportation of 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos, an Ecuadorian asylum seeker. This is a deeply concerning development, given the age and vulnerability of the child.
Lawyers representing Liam and his family have speculated that the Trump administration's push for his deportation could be retaliatory. This is a grave accusation, suggesting that immigration enforcement is being used for political punishment rather than legitimate security concerns.
The concept of retaliatory actions in immigration cases is deeply troubling. It implies that decisions about human lives are being made not on the merits of asylum claims or humanitarian grounds, but as a form of political leverage or punishment.
Who benefits from such a decision? Potentially the administration, by projecting an image of strict immigration enforcement to a particular political base. It's a message that could be perceived as uncompromising, regardless of the human cost.
But the clear and undeniable loser here is Liam Conejo Ramos, a 5-year-old child facing the trauma of deportation, separation, and uncertainty. His fundamental rights to safety and due process are being severely undermined.
This case underscores a systemic problem within immigration policies, particularly when they become politicized. The very system meant to offer refuge to those fleeing danger is being weaponized against children seeking safety.
It highlights the immense power differential between the state and the individual, especially a child, when the state decides to pursue deportation, regardless of the potential for profound psychological and physical harm.
This pattern of using immigration as a tool for political messaging, rather than a humanitarian or legal process, reveals a deep ethical crisis at the heart of state power. It's a reminder of how easily the vulnerable can be exploited.
The claim by a White House official that there's nothing retaliatory about this action rings hollow when lawyers on the ground, witnessing the process, see a clear pattern of targeted enforcement against asylum seekers.
Our final story tonight exposes another disturbing dimension of immigration policy, where discretion, secrecy, and geopolitical agendas intertwine, leading to the covert deportation of individuals in a highly sensitive political context.
Middle East Eye reports that the U.S. has twice deported Palestinians to Israel using private jets. This revelation raises serious questions about the nature of these operations and the potential implications for international law.
The use of private jets for such deportations immediately signals a desire for discretion and secrecy, far from the standard procedures typically employed in immigration enforcement. This lack of transparency is deeply concerning.
These aren't just any deportations, they involve Palestinians being sent to Israel, a move fraught with complex political and humanitarian sensitivities. It raises questions about U.S. complicity in Israeli policies concerning Palestinian residency and rights.
Who benefits from these secretive transfers? Primarily the U.S. and Israeli governments, who can execute these operations without public scrutiny, maintaining control over narratives and avoiding potential international outcry.
The clear losers are the deported Palestinians, whose rights and safety may be compromised, and whose cases are handled in a manner that bypasses standard legal and human rights protocols, potentially violating international norms.
The fact that this has happened twice, according to the report, indicates a pattern, not an isolated incident. This suggests a deliberate, systematic approach to these specific deportations, carried out away from public and media oversight.
It points to a disturbing trend where sensitive immigration matters are handled through opaque channels, particularly when they involve geopolitically charged populations, prioritizing state interests over individual protections.
This story connects directly to the weaponization of immigration, revealing how deportation can be used not just as a legal process, but as a political tool to exert control, maintain alliances, and shape demographics in conflict zones.
It exposes how powerful nations can operate outside the conventional glare of public accountability, using private means to execute policies that have profound human rights implications, particularly for a stateless or marginalized population.
What we've seen tonight, Maya, across these 5 distinct stories, is a stark and troubling pattern of powerful entities, corporations and states, operating with a blatant disregard for truth, accountability, and human dignity.
Absolutely, Alex. From Tesla's executive misleading Congress on critical safety, to Trump's politically motivated beef imports, and India's strategic trade deals, we see economic and political power being wielded, often at the expense of transparency and local communities.
And perhaps most disturbingly, the weaponization of immigration policy. Whether it's the potential retaliation against a 5-year-old asylum seeker like Liam Conejo Ramos or the secretive deportations of Palestinians to Israel, human lives are being treated as expendable pawns.
These aren't isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a systemic breakdown, where the powerful feel emboldened to bend the truth, skirt regulations, and manipulate human lives for strategic gain, whether corporate profit, political narrative, or geopolitical leverage.
The common thread is a deep-seated contempt for accountability. When a tech giant can lie to Congress without immediate, severe repercussions, or when governments can deport children and entire populations covertly, the very fabric of our democratic and ethical systems unravels.
This sinking global order, as one of our sources put it, isn't just about economies, it's about a collapse of ethical standards. It's a call to demand greater transparency, stronger oversight, and a renewed commitment to human rights from all those in power.
The truth, as always, is complex and often uncomfortable. But it's our job, and you're right, to confront it head-on. These stories demand not just our attention, but our action.
We urge you to dig deeper, question official narratives, and hold your elected officials and corporate leaders accountable. The fight for truth begins with informed engagement.
Join us again next time on Truth Report, where we will continue to expose the forces shaping our world and stand for integrity.
For Truth Report, I'm Maya Clarity.
And I'm Alex Truth.